$499, $500.
Yeah.
That's a tough. I don't know how I explain that. I would explain that to my wife. Like, that
Don't. You hide it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I don't know where the other child is that I just sold.
Right.
Eastern group now turning cold, Angels 12. Bogey Dope Western group. 285 and 43 blocks. Okay, I go well south of the line, 14 miles.
Red 9 Slasher 02 copies, clear to engage. Danger close.
Clear the kill, clear the kill. He's abandoned down.
We received not just light automatic.
Mindy, let's come hard left. Roger, just hit him. He's hammer him. That's him right there.
All right, it's a brand new month, and it's a brand new episode of the Air Combat Sim podcast. I am Casmo here with RG and BD. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Hello.
And this episode is all about hardware. So we're going to be talking about throttles. We've got a variety of throttles to talk about, right? We've got, VKB, Thrustmaster, WinWing. So, first of all, what we should talk about is that convention or whatever you went to, Rob. What was that about?
Oh, Flight Sim Expo.
Yeah.
So a few months ago, I went to the Flight Sim Expo in Houston, and it was pretty interesting. I had not been there before. I think Tricker had been there previously when they held it somewhere in Tampa or Orlando. And so I went there. I got a chance to meet some of the folks who I talked with previously, like, for example, Tim Gorman over at Thrustmaster. And it was pretty interesting. We got to see the new F-16 throttle that they had. I also got a chance to talk with some of the folks over at Pimax. And then I've also talked to the heads-up view guy, Dan Hall. So it was really interesting. I think part of what was pretty cool about it was I didn't realize how many people were going to go to something like that. I thought it was more of a niche event, but it was pretty amazing.
Well, was it a lot of like contracting for government and military too, or because until you told me that thing existed, I'd never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, no, it's basically business to consumer, not government, at least not that I saw. And there are really two buckets. There's the almost commercial aircraft, and then there's the more military flight sim stuff. And they're all kind of interspersed together. And then there's also, you could also say there's going to be more on the VR side of the house. So, but it was pretty cool. I mean, I went there and I was amazed at the number, not only the number of people, but the number of products that are actually out there for folks that are interested in commercial sims. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but it was very interesting.
Yeah. Was there any discussion about like force feedback and mag brakes and things like that? Not that I heard, and I didn't get a chance to spend a ton of time there because I actually had to just go on vacation. So I was only there and I only got to spend a bit of time. But I did not hear anything about the force feedback side of the house. There were some folks there that had sim rigs. There was a lot of folks that were really hanging around the VR headset booths.
Yeah, speaking of VR, was there anything with the Clapto gloves or stuff that you can touch things in the cockpit using touch?
I didn't see anything there for that, but we did have Virpil there. Virpil was there, and they were talking about the new collective they're coming out with for the Apache collective, which I thought was interesting.
All right. So. Well, let's talk about the throttles, because I think there's also, as you said, two buckets. There's sort of two buckets when it comes to hardware. One is the direct one-to-one simulation of something, and then there's here's a bunch of buttons and stuff co-located around a throttle, do with it what you will bucket. First of all, what do you guys think about that? Like, what do you like? Which do you prefer?
VD.
I think I've been using the A10 throttle for a long time. Then I switched to Virpil, the Mongoose, which is not a replica of anything. And I think now I'm flying only 3 aircraft really. And if I had 3 throttles separate for each of them. I would probably swap them before flying, which is not a big deal if you already have it set up, and then I prefer that. But well, yeah. But on the other hand, if it's more general, you can use it for anything you want and other sims, etc. So yeah, I guess I prefer the replicas, but that's just me.
Yeah. Rob?
Yeah, I think that I prefer to have more of the more general because of speed. I'm old, and so and just a speed brake needs to be where the speed brake is, regardless. So that's kind of my take. Is that if I can get a good throttle or a stick and I know where the things are, but the challenge is when you take a look at something and there's not enough buttons or there's not enough pieces, then that's an issue.
But I think this Orion replica, Orion throttle base is a good example. So I have the F15E throttles. I mean the grip, but the throttled the base is generally. It has everything on it what you want. So it has F18 stuff, F16 stuff, A10 stuff, and it's very easy to use, and it gives you lots of options. So it's a nice combo in a way.
Yeah, it's sort of a hybrid. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that it's, as I tell people on stream, it's an embarrassment of riches to have 3 or 4 different throttles to like swap out. Like, hang on, let me throw on my F15 one. It is a challenge, I think, to try to remember, have that muscle memory built around it. And like you said, I agree with you, Rob. Like, to me, the speed brake is a great example. The speed brake needs to be where the speed brake is, and sometimes it's not necessarily the same. So it is a little bit different. But I think for most people, obviously, you're only going to have one. I mean, we're in a weird situation where either you're a gear nut like Rob is, or you've been, blessed with having some people send you some trial equipment to take a look at. But we'll look at these two sort of buckets, and I think we'll start on one extreme, which honestly is that Thrustmaster F16 that we've all had a chance to look at. I think we've all had a chance. I don't know if BD had a chance to look at one yet.
BD has not, since he's in Belgium. And we could only get North America, so we're waiting. So hopefully he'll get his soon because he's.
I hope so. Yeah, I really like to check it out. But listening what you guys have to say.
Sure. Well, I mean, my initial impression, obviously, I mean, you can't go wrong with the design. I mean, it's for lack of a better term, it's copied off of something that really exists. So it looks good. I think the thing that was weird to me was because of the design, in the real F16, it's sort of built into the sidewall there. Well, you've got to replicate that sidewall now. So you have to make this giant Mongoose, piece of equipment that then becomes a little bit unstable. So you definitely, it's not something that I think you could just throw up on the desk and be good to go. So to your point about the modularity of swapping between, I think that one's a little bit more difficult to just throw up on the desk and swap out with your Mongoose or whatever, if you're one of those kind of guys, because you might have a little bit of issue with it tipping over. I personally am not a huge fan of the things that are built with specificity. And I was thinking about this earlier before we came on. Price wise, I think that one's fairly steep, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I think that's because of what it is, right? Because they probably don't plan to sell as many as VKB plans to sell of theirs, or Virpil plans, because it's a select clientele, right? If you're not an F16 guy, which I am not, I'm not going to buy that because it doesn't work for me to use, like we were talking about before going live. I like to have 2 throttles because I like to fly a lot of 2-engine aircraft. But if you're an F16 nut and you like that thing and you're building your own little home cockpit, or even you just want that little piece of, realism, it's a great choice. It seems to be in good shape. Like we were talking before, I don't have the software, so I haven't been able to play with it fully, but I plugged it in, everything worked fine. I think you need the software to make all the buttons work, if I'm trying to remember, because it's been a couple of weeks since I played with it. Yeah. So that was the one issue, but I didn't see any issues where I felt like it wasn't going to work. Kind of looking over my shoulder at it. No, I mean, it's a good design, but it is steep. So you're definitely got to be one of those guys that really loves the F16.
Yeah, no, it was interesting at the Flight Sim Expo, and that's when Thrustmaster did their unveil for this product. And it was interesting because they had the designer go up on stage and actually talk about how he was designing this during COVID, which was pretty interesting to hear. So anytime I hear a product designer and what they're thinking, and so as he was going through the mental process of designing it, it's like, well, if you're going to do this, and it's a pretty unique design, because when you take a look at some of the ones like the Mongoose, or you take a look at the WinWing one, which we'll talk about next, you have this side panel that has to be there. And WinWing, with their F-16 grip, they have that as well. So there's this whole thing on the side that you have to manage to get it to go, whether you're starting up or whether you're going into afterburner. But to listen, go ahead.
I think it's all due to this one button for the countermeasures, right? That you can just slam with your fist. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but there's also this other piece that's on there that they have, which actually you have to sort of adjust it to get it into afterburner. We actually have to pull the throttle. It goes into more of an up position. So, but
it's weird.
But listening to the designer, it was pretty cool to hear him go, well, they were all locked down on COVID, and they're trying to figure out, what buttons are they going to have? So they're coming up with this new product 2 years ago, and then ultimately now it's kind of rolled out. Now, to your point, at $500, it's $499, $500.
Yeah.
That's a tough, I don't know how I explain that. I would explain that to my wife. Like, that I don't
hide it.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know where the other child is that I just sold for this. But if you're an F-16 guy, and I think to your point, there's, if you're trying to get a replica build and you're putting together your kit and you've got the F-16 throttle and it's just completing the whole thing, and you're an F-16 person, I think that totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, and it's funny, BD, you kind of bring that up, that it does seem to be for that one single button. But yeah, there's some mechanical movement there, which again goes back to that point. You got to have that thing locked in tight. Otherwise, you're going to be, if you're in the throes of ecstasy of trying to get away from bad guys or doing whatever you're doing, yeah, you're going to be flopping that thing around. But it's really good looking. I like its ergonomic. I'm assuming it's kind of a 1-to-1 scale. There's not any kind of rescaling going on. It is a huge thing. When it came out of the box, just the box arrived, I was kind of shocked at it. But the other thing I don't like, but
ecstasy.
When you're making that sky penis, the other thing that's weird too. I say weird, but it's just different, is because it's pulled from the real aircraft. Like, when you join the Air Force, right? If you join the Army, whatever you join, and you go to fly these aircraft, that's the only aircraft you've probably fly. Like, you might switch over at some point, but you're not swapping, right? And that's what DCS players do a lot, right? Like, I've been flying a lot of the A-10 lately, and then yesterday I bought the Focke-Wulf 190. Never flown it before. Yesterday, that's all I did. We have that luxury to get to swap back and forth. And so we get very used to our hands and our fingers doing certain things. The F-16 is a very different animal than anything else that I've played with as far as a control setup. And so that's another thing to kind of wrap your head around, is like, okay, well, now I got to dial with this, with my thumb instead of my pinky finger, whatever the case may be. So there's a learning curve, I guess you could say, that also comes with that kit.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think, if you're adjusting the radar with a dial, that is a very unique one, or maybe it matches something you'd find on the F-35.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's just a lot to it. It's very different than if you're used to something else. But all in all, yeah, if you're an F-16 guy that really likes the F-16, you can't go wrong with it. I mean, it is what it is. But I think what I'm trying to say is I think you'll have a hard time using it if then you decide, hey, you know what, I want to go fly the A-10. I don't think it's going to translate quite as easily.
Split throttle.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to have a split
Split
throttle.
Yeah,
that's it.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I think
no split throttle Maverick maneuvers for you.
I think so from a quality standpoint, it's Thrustmaster. You can't go wrong with that. And I think it feels solid without a doubt. And I would expect it to hold up just like the rest of their gear. And, that's the one thing I would say, that when it comes down to the purchase options, that if you buy it, you can buy it through Amazon, right? And if you have a problem with it, you're going to be able to go back to Thrustmaster. You're going to be able to go back through Amazon to figure it out. So there's warranty and those pieces. So I think that that's one of the boxes that's checked. That if you're looking for something like if you go, hey, I really need to have that warranty that's 100%, that to replace it or something goes wrong, Thrustmaster is going to be there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a tradition of excellence, if you will, that you can bank on. Well, so moving into the next one, which, like we said, is kind of a hybrid because it does replicate real stuff and at the same time kind of take some liberties with design. Talk about the WinWing. So what they've done, which is really interesting, is they've got the Orion 2, which is just the base, but then you've got some modularity as far as the throttles that you want to put. And I'm looking at the website here. Throttle grips, you could have the F18 or now the F15, and then there's two different types of the F15 ones. We had both to look at. Honestly, I didn't even play with the basic one. I just put the full metal with everything on it on there.
And just to be clear, thank you WinWing for sending this to the entire team. That's been great, and thanks Thrustmaster for sending. So we got all these products at no charge for us to take a look at and evaluate.
Yeah, and some people aren't going to like that, and you're going to think that we're not going to give an honest review. I'll tell you what I don't like, straight up about every one of these things.
Let it roll.
But we'll get to that. I mean, they're all good. It's hard to find. I can find something wrong with anything, right? But let's start with the good on this one. Obviously, it's the real deal, right? It's designed like the F15. I'm a huge F15E fan, so I think when we look at the WinWing, you kind of have to break it up between the throttle grips themselves and then the Orion 2 base because they are two different products. What I like about the grips is everything. In fact, they even went a little overboard and above and beyond, I guess you could say, because they didn't really model the exact F15 when you look at the EX one, right? It's actually got a little bit extra as far as a couple additional buttons, which is super helpful in DCS because, again, you are probably swapping between aircraft. Or there's other things, like, for instance, there's these tiny little buttons on the left side, which I use for like radio controls, right? Because the worst thing you're doing when you're trying to do an air-to-air refuel and you return pre-contact, which you hear like 30 times, and you got to hit that ready pre-contact, that is not the time you want to be messing around with the F10 comms menu. So I just have that preset up to just hit that button. So having some additional things added to it is a good thing. The vibration, at first, I wasn't a huge fan of it. Because I didn't understand it. Like, it didn't seem to vibrate when I thought it should be vibrating. But the more I just play with it, go ahead.
You're not a woman. That's why.
Oh, Jesus.
You can cut it out later.
And to be fair, Trigger, we haven't heard from him since he got this, so we're concerned that
we're worried.
The vibration
we're worried
got him.
that the vibration is he's still working it. So.
But when I stopped thinking about the vibration and I just kind of ignored that that's what it did, and then it would do it, it was like it was accompanying what was going on in a positive way, but it wasn't overwhelming me. So I did like that. So again, overall, I think the throttle themselves, I'm a fan of. What I'm not a fan of is the Orion 2 itself. I don't like the layout of it. I don't like all the switches up at the front because if I've got the throttles forward, they're really hard to get to. I just think that they would be better served on the back end, like pretty much any other throttle kit that I've ever seen or played around with. The F16 was notwithstanding, but that's, again, straight from the real aircraft type design. But I just didn't like those switches up at the front. And I think there's some toggles on the side that I'm not a huge fan of because they're so big. They're just this massive like paddles that are sticking up and they kind of get in the way. BD talked about that the WinWing, the Orion 2, has kind of got slices of all the real aircraft, right? So it's got like this F16 area and this F18 area. I actually don't like that because and this is me, this is just my brain at work. If it says landing gear, guess what I use it for? Landing gear, whether it makes sense or not to me. Like, I just can't wrap my head around, well, it says landing gear, but I'm going to use it for master arm. So I don't like
Right,
that just
right.
personally. Like, don't try to be creative for me. Let me just figure out what I want to use it for.
Yeah.
But if I understand that it's an aesthetic choice and it looks good, all the switches and toggles are excellent looking. So it is a good bit of kit. It also is a hefty sum. I'm trying to find it exactly on the website right now while we talk. But Rob, I mean, what are your thoughts?
So I think you're right to split it up into two components. You've got the grip and then you've got the base. And I think you're right. There's one thing I didn't particularly. So I'll start off with I really like the base, or excuse me, I really like the metal grip. I thought it felt solid.
Yeah.
And then I think the buttons on it, it's felt really good. I think the thing I didn't like on the grips was the finger lifts. I felt that they were plastic, and I didn't feel like I thought they kind of took away from, especially the texture on the very bottom of them. Seemed a little bit less than it could be. But I mean, overall, I like the feel of the grip itself. So I thought that was great. I think in terms of the Orion base, I thought it was fine. I think the one thing I'd say is that I had a little bit of I think some of the recessed pieces, if you're using VR, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because trying to find some of the buttons is gonna be difficult. I like it. But for example, where they have the retract launch bar, that's my landing gear switch. And
But
my
it says
flaps are
launch
right
bar.
next
How can
to
you
it.
use it for landing gear? I don't understand.
That's a great question. It's because I had to put on my goggles, right? And I
Casper,
don't see it.
How long did you spend using the fold unfold knob for the F-15, the wing fold unfold?
Oh, every day. Yeah, every day.
It doesn't work. Doesn't work. Come on.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
So yeah, I mean, the thing is that you have to map everything anyways. But
Yeah.
I would. So my comment is, to your point, like air to air and air to ground buttons. I think that's fine. But I can't find it when.
Yeah, they're hard to get to.
They're hard to get to, and especially if you're wearing VR goggles. And then I think the other piece is the labels on there. To your point, I think that's where this would be better off. I think where the folks at WinWing said, look, we've done a lot of research into it, and we've made a great hybrid. I don't know who their audience is, but for me personally, I would prefer no labels or something a little bit different. And that would work better for me.
Yeah. Well, I, as you're saying that, I'm looking at it and I'm trying to think, like, is there a way to maybe have it where you could label it yourself? But, is that too much? Is that going to add cost? At the end of the day, we're sort of complaining about, how delicious our cake is, right? It's still a great piece of equipment. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm trying to find the price because I didn't prepare for this. I think I'm looking at the right, because their website, all these companies, their websites are a little bit dazzling. And I don't want to be dazzled. I want to just look at the website and say, okay, that costs that much. And I just order it here because I'm looking at this, but it's like trying to give me some other stuff. And I don't know that I want it. But Orion 2 HOTAS Max is $500. But I think this comes with the joystick too. The Orion 2 joystick. So I don't know how much the Orion itself costs. I'm gonna guess
like
around.
$200.
It's how much?
250.
250, and that comes with a throttle, like sort of its standard throttle.
Yeah, the base is like one size fits all, which is cool if you have few aircraft. It's not cool if you want to. And I agree that those two kind of things on the right, which like to zoom in, out, whatever, they're too big.
Yeah.
But I didn't like. I mean, the manual to put it all together was not very good. I mean, I'm not a very technical savvy person, so it took me some time to figure out how to really put everything together. But once I did, what I really love about it is it has a lot of those three position switches, and they all
Yeah.
work out of the box. So it's 3 position
Yes.
switch in DCS. Just you don't have to set up anything in the software. It just works like that, which I
That
really
is a
like.
great point, because when we get to Virpil and VKB, which are great products, I absolutely hate dealing with the software. So that is a good point. This one was pretty much, in fact, this is the only one I think that's out of the box, ready to go. You didn't have to do anything to it. So I found it here, Orion 2 throttle base, 10th anniversary limited edition is $215. And then the normal one's $215. So I don't know what the difference is between those two. Probably nothing.
Yeah,
I think it's
there's
aesthetic.
they have different switches on the.
Okay.
They have different switches on. If you like a little square knob or something like that, so it's a little bit
Okay,
different.
gotcha. Yeah, so $215, but that's just the throttle base, and then you've got to have whatever attachment to it. But that's a good point, BD. That it's ready to go out of the box. That is definitely a good thing. But for $215 plus, then I gotta buy the other components, which I'm looking here. The F18 is 136. The F15 is 136, or I'm sorry, 165 for the hardcore one. I thought there was a basic one too, but I don't see it on here. So you're looking at, what, almost $400, over $400.
Yeah, it's 136 plus shipping.
Plus shipping. Yeah, plus shipping. And I don't know, because I haven't explored it. Is there software with it where you can expand those buttons?
I'm not sure if it works like that. I mean, I haven't checked all the
so either.
options. It's easy to check how they work, and they all work out of the box. Even the thing in the throttle where you put it with the detent, you put it to idle, and then you put it off. It also recognizes it as a switch, so it's easy to just. That's also a cool thing.
Yeah, that it does. But like with VKB and the Virpil, particularly the Virpil Mongoose, you can, just by a turn of a dial, you can now duplicate buttons across the device. I don't think you can do that with this one. But again, I don't know how many buttons you really need. I've been playing the F15 quite a bit with the WinWing, and still had buttons to spare. Like, I just didn't use them all on the Orion 2 base. So I think it's very easy to get dazzled by how many buttons you get. But if you really think about it, you don't really need as many as you probably think that you do.
One thing just to mention about the software, you do need that to get the vibration feedback.
That's correct.
If you don't have that on or running, and I think the software, it's coming, it's getting better, I think, but again, it takes up a bit of memory. But at the end of the day, I think when you look at software, it does run out of the box just fine, except for the left. When I got it, I had for whatever reason, it wasn't recognizing the left part on the throttle.
That's right. I forgot about that. I had the same problem. That's right.
And
so it didn't work out of the box, but but you didn't have to do a lot of work either. I think you just had to download the software and just have it recognize it, and then you were good. Versus you didn't have to go in there and like set a bunch of weird stuff, and it was easier. I do remember it being easier than setting like a Virpil or the VKB.
Yeah, and once you got the piece done, it was good to go. Go ahead, BD.
Yeah.
Rob, you mentioned the finger lifts. It's a pity they don't work as finger lifts in F15E, so you cannot use them to start your engines. They're just those plastic things that you use to move the throttle beyond the idle or whatever. But it would be nice.
Well, how I got around that was because I think you mentioned in the software you can change it so that when the throttle's all the way back, it counts as a button. Yep. So what I do for an engine start with it is I lift the finger lift, and then I just move the throttle forward, and then bring it right back. And so it hits that stopper on the back, and I have that mapped as the actual finger lift. So that's the only way I've kind of worked around it without having a separate button. But you're right. That would be cool to be able to do that.
I followed your lead on that, but I do think, and it was in the Super Taurus, which I was using before the WinWing one most recently, and that one actually with the finger lift does activate. Now there was something on Hoggett that was going back and forth and said, "How does that happen?" So again, apologies to anybody if I'm misstating it or the experience for me has been different. But at then,
Well,
for
who
me,
makes that one? Who makes that one?
WinWing.
Oh, they do. But does it connect to the Orion the same way, or is it has its own kit?
No, it's got its own kit. So
That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has this huge, ginormous box. They don't make it anymore. I think they've kind of
okay.
gone, we're going away from that.
Because that's the thing. Because I had people ask me in my video, they were disappointed because the finger lifts didn't act as buttons. But I get it because of the modularity of it, you would have to have some sort of connector there. And it's just another point of failure that you may not want to mess with because I'm swapping out the F-18 to the F-15. Now I got to plug some stuff in. So I can, it's a trade-off to have that modularity. It's wishful thinking. Yeah, I wish it would do it, but it doesn't. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, and you guys, I just want to tell you sucked because you got the F-15E module early, and and I did not. So, but anyway.
But you didn't have to write the whole manual for it.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, let's be clear. You wouldn't want the manual I would write for that. It's like in crayon.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's transition to the VKB, which I always forget the name of it. It's called the
Stack. Is it Stack?
Single Twin Engine Control System. And then it comes with a variety of different options. The one that I was sent was the standard throttle extension module, which is, I guess, about 5 or 6 inches long and wide, and that attaches to the back, or it came attached to the back. I guess I can remove it if I wanted to, but then it's got some other options there. Rob, I know you've got it. BD, I don't know if you've got it, but what are your thoughts, Rob?
I think so I haven't really had enough time to test it out, but
Sure.
And that's one that I purchased it, and ordered it, but I think the throw feels really good. I think it also comes with, like, you can change the color of the grip itself. I'm not sure where.
I'm so glad they did that, though. I'm so glad. I didn't like that red at all.
Right, but I mean, I don't know. Well, of the features, like choose red, green, or gray. I'm not sure
for
that
VR. For VR users, that's the best.
No, but I mean, jokes aside, like, that turned me off when they first released pictures of it. It had that. I was like, why? Why is that red? And then when it showed up and I opened up the box and there was I was like, okay, like I'm down with that. But I agree with you though. The throw on it, I don't know why, but I'm glad you brought that up because it just feels so good. Like I got it right here. In fact, I'm just gonna put it in my lap and just play with it. It's like petting a cat, but it just feels so solid. And I really like the ability to tighten or loosen the friction very easily.
Right.
There's just knobs on the front, like every other design that you got. Well, you got to have the special Allen wrench that's attached to it, or you've lost, or whatever. I don't like Allen wrenches. This I can just do it right here. I love it.
Yeah, no, I think the throw is great. I think the screws on it to tighten it up is simple and easy. I would say if you need to change out if you need to change the color of the grip, you have to find a little tiny screwdriver, and there are 2 screws on the front and 2 screws on the back.
But they send you the screwdriver you need, so at least you got that.
Yes, they do send it to you. I don't know if you're in product development of going, you know what would be great to do is to give people the colors they want. And there are 3 of them. I'm not sure where I'd put that on the priority list, but someone thought it was important. But so there it is. But I think the throw feels good. There's one piece on the back that makes it so they have a variety of detent. I don't even know what the right pronunciation.
Detents, but they say detent in the video. Yeah, it's
detent. Yeah, detent. Okay.
Detent.
So they give you, like, here's a box in case you want to have 14 different ways to make it feel, and you're like, holy crap. So I mean, and I think the engineering is really good. It looks great. It feels great.
Talking to their community rep, who's the one that sent me. So full disclosure, VKB did send me this. I mean, we've been talking for months. They wanted to send it to me when it was ready to go. he said they spent a lot of time. I'm holding it up for BD's view here. It came with these. There's actually another one, a white one, and then it's got a black one that's already installed. And so I think what the idea here is that you've got these little metal nipples, and there's a ton of them in here. That's right, I said nipple. And you just attach it, and you can kind of loosen it and put it wherever you want. So, for instance, I think what the intent is that, okay, red, this is my F16 detent. Green, this is my F14 detent set. And so instead of having to make all these adjustments, all I got to do is loosen this one screw on the front, pop this color out, put the other color in, boom, it's done. And then it's got a, and so what you would have to do, I guess, from based on the video, because I haven't played with it, is go into the software and set up so that detent 1, you know, the detent is accounted for in the throw. And then it's got a dial here. And then it's like, okay, green is number 2. So I push this to 2, I put the green in, boom, I'm ready to go. So very cool. Almost a level of modularity that is almost overboard, right? Like I'll never use it. I would never need it, but I can see people out there that certainly would. So I think in their terms, they sort of addressed what we've talked about, which is people that play DCS, you're probably jumping around between aircraft. And so now they've made an easy way to make that happen for you. And then the other part that I really, really like about this kit is the fact that you can swap out these buttons. So you've got the 3 on the side and the 2 on the front. And with the applied screwdriver that came with it, you can pop out what came there, which a lot of these is just this little button, this one button. You unscrew it with 2 screws, you pull it out, you unhook it with the wire, and you plug in a 5-way switch, and boom, you're ready to go. And then you just got to like reset the software, basically just push a couple buttons and plug it back in. And so now you've got modularity and you can move these things. So for instance, with mine, it's got this 3-way mic switch that's here on the front. It actually came on the side, and I was like, well, I don't like it there. I want it there. So I just popped it out, put it there. So you've got all this kind of maneuverability. So again, addressing the fact that you may fly different aircraft and may like button configurations in a different way based on that aircraft. I think that's a winning design.
I think that's it, yeah. If you watch their videos, which after I got it, I started watching it. It's pretty impressive. It's very thoughtful design.
Yeah,
and in the flexibility within it. So I, as a product guy, I take a look at it and go, they really, you know, there's a lot of thinking behind this. And then I think from a, how much is it?
It's cheap.
Yeah, comparatively, it's cheap.
Let me see. I had it pulled up here. If you want the one that I've got, which is the basically the big one with the button box attached to the back. It's not the high. All right. So let's go through it. There's 4 different ways to do this. You can get the throttle itself, which is just the throttle and the buttons that are attached to it, and then the dial. That's $199. If you want to get, and I think this is the one you got, Rob, the Mini Plus. So it's got the throttle, and then it's got a little bank of what looks like 7 or 8 buttons on the back. Yeah. That's $219. So you're only paying $20 more for a few buttons that you can play around with, and we can talk about that in a second with the software. Then you've got the standard kit, which is the one that I've got. So it's got the large button box attached to the back. It's got 2 rotary dials. It's got 15, 20 buttons on it that you can change and add more with the software. That's only $279. And then if you wanted to go the full Monty, you'd get the button box that I have, plus the button box that you have, plus this weird little mount that puts one of the button boxes in front, which I'm personally not a fan of, and I wouldn't like probably because it's in front of the throttle. But $319. So $319 versus any other throttle that we've looked at, and the VPC Mongoose, which I don't know if we'll talk about or not. That's a huge savings benefit for what you're getting. And again, there's a ton of buttons on this throttle. We just talked about the 5 that I can turn into 5-way switches. We didn't even talk about the fact that there's 2 more, or an axis, a dial, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other buttons on the throttle itself. It's got more than you need.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree. I think that it's, as I said, I think it's very thoughtful in terms of the design that they put into it. The one thing that I thought was kind of, if I had to be negative about, would be the one module that kind of goes on the back that's got the 4 buttons around dial, and 2 things. One says armed and the other says safe. arm safe. It's like what? So, anyways,
Yeah.
again, you got to put something somewhere. But I would, in the world of, I would have, as a nit, I would not have put anything on there. So while I haven't tried it out myself, I think the software looks great. So when I've watched the videos and them interacting with the software and the mapping of it, it looks pretty good. I also like the has the finger lift in the front and in the back, and they feel really solid. So I don't know.
Yes, but they're not actually finger lifts.
They have things.
They are buttons that
Button things
have nothing to do with the like they won't
Yes, you're
prevent
correct.
you from moving the throttle at all. They are literally just buttons that the front ones
Yes.
look like finger lifts, and then you've got the two sort of paddles in the back, which I think are a great addition. I think they're useful for someone like me. I have the finger lifts on the VPC Mongoose. I never use them. I don't have anything set up for it. I don't, I just don't want to
Well-
mess with it. But having them as buttons, I think that's handy.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is that if I was going to sit there and go, I would map one to idle,
Right.
and then the other one I would say, okay, engine start. Or I would do something with it that might map to those.
That would replicate what the finger lifts are doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
To some extent.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, and you and I talked offline about this too. The complaint that you and I both had when it comes to those additional button boxes is they are kind of cartoonish, as you just brought up. I'm not a fan of the white on the buttons. Again, holding up for BD, it just kind of throws the aesthetic of it. I'd like to see more of these metal toggles that you see in other kits. But again, if we go back to that price, Rob's got that sort of cartoonish little button box attached to the back. It's only like $20 though. It's $20 and you've added probably 10 buttons because you can play with the software and extend. So I don't know if you know this, Rob, but you can go into software and using the dial, you can turn this into a shift 1 and a shift 2. So you can multiply the buttons that you have.
Like in the verbal.
With that. Exactly.
like a
But you
Virpil.
just can't do it as much because the Virpil, you can do it 5 times. I don't think you can extend past what Virpil has done with theirs. The other thing I will say, because I have been glowing its praises, because I really do like this kit, I absolutely hate the slew on the thumb. I just can't get around it. I don't like that placement. It doesn't jive with anything that I've ever used. I wish that it was modular because I understand that there are certain things. Heck, I think the F-16 one, the slew is on the thumb. But personally, I'm just so used to having it on the front of a throttle, it throws me off to use it on the side. So that's my only gripe on it. But if you're a dude that's got the Thrustmaster T16,000 or whatever it's called, that's kind of that basic kit that a lot of us get when we first start out. I had it for years and years and years. But if you're looking to upgrade, man, you cannot go wrong for what did we say, $200 just for that throttle? Psh,
Yeah,
you can't beat that.
it's not a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get over the thumb thing if it saves me $200. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, without a doubt, it is a good value for the price that it is.
Yeah.
For what you get. Yeah, no doubt. And again, the other thing, and part of what I've been trying to do is put together a framework to think about as we start looking at more gear and started thinking about it. And again, one of the things that does it need software? What does the software look like? Does it need, how does the quality feel? What does shipping look like? Because getting stuff from in the States, from Europe or from China, you can add like $60
Yeah.
just to do it. So that's a real consideration. And then the other one is support. Like, for example, on WinWing, again, if something goes south, trying to get support for it. I actually had something I purchased, and I had it for, there was a USB cable that was a problem, and they said, well, go to an electronics store. I don't know what that is. I don't, where is that?
It's moral support.
Right. That's right.
We're with you. Fix it.
Yeah.
Good luck.
So get soldering iron out.
Let us know how it
just,
turns out.
well, no, but and as it turned out, what they said is like, hey, we'll give you a discount on something. So and again, it doesn't, if it had been Thrustmaster, it would have been a different story. So you always, as we think about the gear that you're getting, you have to think through, what's the price, what's the quality, what's the software look like, what does it look like in case something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So, and that's just, part and parcel. And if you're in China, frankly, if you're a Chinese company, that's I'm not sure they think, they're not necessarily building in that into their pricing structure of what it's going to cost to replace it, including shipping.
Yeah. And it's not a hit on them, like in certain situations for support, because what are you going to do? Send it back to China? Like it
Right.
gets outrageous. So yeah, that is something to think about is what kind of support can you get other than moral support, which is nice. It's very comforting. Do we talk about, I know we weren't sent this, but I think it's worth mentioning the VPC Mongoose. I just don't know if you guys have any experience with it.
I have it.
You have it. You have it as well, Rob. Okay. I mean, I think, at the end of the day, when we're looking at a kit that can fill all the roles, that's a great one. And so it's hard, VKB, I think where they're going to, win out a lot is because of that modularity and that low price point because of that modularity. But if you're just looking for a solid bit of kit, but you're willing to spend a little bit extra, but it's all in one bag, that VPC Mongoose was a CM3 kit, and I had that price up here. It was so $400. It's not cheap, but you get a ton with it.
And it's very, very solid. I mean, it's really well done, and it's amazing. And as you said, this knob that you can have like 5 different modes for 6 switches, which gives you 30 switches just like that.
Yeah.
I mean, one gripe I have with it is you said that the software allows you to do a lot. That's true, but it's not very intuitive or straightforward.
Oh, no,
it takes a long time to learn how to properly use it.
Yes. Yeah, I was just doing that yesterday, adding some more buttons to the design, and I had to watch some YouTube videos because you're right, and I think that's true for VKBs. But I think both of them, just the software. I don't have a suggestion on how to make it easier because I know it's probably a lot harder than I think it is. But yeah, it is not intuitive at all. There's some things that are sort of lost in translation. Heck, the one that always confuses me on the VPC, it says load VPC, save VPC or something, and it's like I don't know which one's which, and I'm always terrified to hit the wrong button because I don't want to like erase all the work I just did, But when it gets into like all the nitnoid stuff that you can do, where you can change the throw and the feeling of all these different axes, I've not even touched it because I'm afraid to even mess with it because I feel like I'm just going to completely destroy it and then I'll never get back to where I was.
Yeah, you can even turn the axis into buttons. So each 10% increase will be another button. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, because that flap axis on the side, which I never use because I never figure out how to make it a button. Because I can't think of any DCS planes that I fly where they actually have a flap that it's based on the level that you turn it. I think there's 1 or 2, but I need to do that. I need to figure it out, but I'm afraid to do it.
I use that for zoom. When I was.
Do you really?
Yeah.
You take your hand off the throttle to zoom?
To zoom into so if I was looking at I would if I was trying to zoom in on like where is X or Y, try to see something because I'm old and blind. But yeah.
Well, no, I mean I use the little axis on the front. It's got that little axis dial on the front. That's one of the things too, like it becomes part of who you are and how you use the stuff, and then it affects you otherwise, right? So my problem too with the VKB, it's got that axis down with your thumb. That's way down low. I'll hold it up again for BD because I know he hasn't seen it. But this is the only axis on the throttle itself, and so that becomes your zoom, and that's very different if you're used to what I'm used to is using that one that's in the center of the VPC. And then same thing for the F-15 going back to WinWing. I mean, you kind of have to use that pinky. At least I do. Because the ones that are on the front, they got those weird little knobs. They're just not comfortable. Yeah. But I've talked to people and they're like, oh, well, no, I use the lever like Rob does. And it blows my mind because I can't even imagine zooming. You must not zoom very much. I think I zoom way too much, probably. Okay, yeah. You just leave it at
He flies zoomed all the way in all the time.
All the time.
Pretty much.
What is that? Find anything.
How come I've been shot down again?
I just saw this guy. Yeah.
No, it's but I think to your point though is that it's interesting to figure out how everybody's going to use it a bit differently, right?
Yeah.
So even if you take a look at, let's say I get the Mongoose, right? And then I'm like, okay, well, what will I map to the speed brake? I guarantee that almost, I think it's interesting to think about how everybody uses it a bit differently.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes, even though with this one, right, here's all the mapping of like, oh, it's, you've got all these different things on it. I'm not going to use, I don't use like the, do I not use this if it's not, do I not use this section if it's not the F-16?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't have the F-16, so what am I going to use it for?
Yeah, it's nothing.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Taking a step back, it's amazing if you look how many different things you have now on the market that you could use being a
Right?
flight sim enthusiast, and it's a small group. I think. I mean, it's not like World of Tanks or whatever. It's really a niche market, and it's being pumped out all the time. The collectives and all that stuff is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a niche of a niche, right? Because like we haven't even touched civilian simulator, here's a 747 throttle quadrant, and things like that. So yeah, it's wild to see, especially if you're an old guy like us who grew up flying, Jane's games and micro pros where you had a joystick that had like 4 buttons on it, and somehow you made it work. And now, I mean, my God, when's the last time you flew the A10 and DCS? Your finger, you get done and you got like a monkey's claw because you're just over there just what do I do? But yeah, you're right. I think what's important for anyone listening to this, what has been probably a train wreck of a show, because we're just so scatterbrained because there's so much we're trying to talk about and trying to articulate without just saying, well, it feels really good. Is I think what you have to do is look at what you have right now. What are you absolutely comfortable with? And sort of like build a list. Like, these are my non-negotiables, right? So for me, my non-negotiables, I don't like the thumb slew. I can't do it. It's just not in my nature. So anything that's got a thumb slew, okay, that one is out. And you got to find those things that are like, these are the absolute top 3 features that I want, and then look at it. And price might be one of those features, right? You might get over the thumb slew because, well, hell, it's $200 cheaper. I'll figure it out. So your budget might be one of those as well. But I think that all of these are reputable sources. I mean, every one of these companies has a tradition of putting out good stuff. All of these that I have seen, I would not question in any way, shape, or form using them, that they're good bits of kit. But yeah, you've got to go into this a little bit armed with what you want, because if you just buy it and expect, well, I'm just going to be happy because it's VKB or because it's Virpil, you might be disappointed because there's some feature that you don't like.
Yeah, and just to go into detail, we were talking about this before. Obviously, this is not a review of the gear. We're having a conversation. This is what I joked as throttle talk. But at the end of the day, go take a look at what Red Kite and Steve Davies and all these folks that have it. Take a look, and Jabbers is going to come out and do reviews on some stuff. And so, Jabbers is probably going to have a spreadsheet or two. So of the nth degree. So
of
take
the metallurgy.
A look. Yeah, exactly. And polonium. Anyway, but yeah, go ahead. I mean, I would definitely take a look at the detailed reviews, and I think it's a great idea. When you sit there and you say, what do I need? What am I looking for? How much am I going to invest? And what can I, what am I interested in doing it? Because if you've got, and it's a big question of going, do you want a generalized throttle or stick or whatever you're going to get? Or do I want something specific to an aircraft? And then take a look at it. But, I've got no real, all the stuff that we're talking about are nits. And I've not.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll say this. I mean, after it's all said and done, I've played with the F-16 throttle. But I've got the Orion back on my back here. It's back on there, but I also like to play around with the different ones. I also like to pull the Mongoose out after a while and put that back on. But so, anyways, I think that and BD, I know we've got to jump off here for you, but and thank you for your time. But at the end of the day, I appreciate. I think what we can do is less on the detailed reviews and just tell you in context what we think about these. And that's, I think that's the best that we can add to the discussion. But I do appreciate Tim over at Thrustmaster Max over at WinWing for sending these along. And Tim, if you're watching, BD really needs an F16 throttle.
Please. I need it.
All right. Well, we will wrap it up there. Again, just kind of a general discussion. I think it'd be cool to do this live sometime and then kind of show stuff off and talk about the stuff. But you're right. There's a ton of other people that have access to this. They're doing great reviews. I saw Red Kite's review on the F16. Good stuff. So definitely go check those out. I'm working on one for the VKB. I'll work on one for the F16 once I get the software situation sorted out. I did one for the WinWing. At the end of the day, you'd be happy with any of these. So you, like we said, just figure out what you're looking for in a kit. So we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, guys, for this sort of ad hoc get together. And we've been talking about it for a while, but we finally found the time. Hopefully BD's kids have not set fires or anything while he's been here. Looking at all the stuff that he can't get.
Not living in America, yeah?
Yeah.
But a funny story at the end, because we were at the Tailhook, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And the Lockheed Martin had this F-35 sim. And this C-130 guy came to fly the F-35. And he just broke the sim completely because he was smashing the throttle all the time, like forward, back, like full straight.
yeah.
He said, that's how we fly. And he just completely broke the sim.
Well, that's
Yeah,
pretty-
that was a real.
Well, I think I'm just proud of BD because there's not many people that can drink more than he can, and so when he goes to Tailhook, he lets them all. He drinks them all under the table. He lets them all on the floor and then heads on back to Belgium. It's impressive.
Goes bowling.
Yeah,
All right, gents. Well, until next time, thanks for listening. And we'll see you guys in the future. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
This has been the Air Combat Sim Podcast. Music by Vampire Stepdad. Want to support the show? Check out our Patreon. Follow us on Facebook. And be sure to leave a comment and rating.